Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one I'm going to be teaching you how to do a damage over time system so that you can have a projectile that goes and hits an enemy and then does damage over time, or something that hits the player. However you want to do it, you'll end up changing it for your game, of course, but this is the general basis on how to do it. The stuff I currently have in the scene isn't really anything, it's just a sphere and a cube. And 3 empty scripts, just have them ready, and they're already Visual Studio's open ready to use them. Other things I want to mention before the video quickly. So as usual, if you like the video, subscribe, join the Discord server, whatever. And also, yeah, I'm going to be away for the next 2 days, so there won't be another video till Sunday. But obviously, as soon as I get back, then there will be more videos. Probably a Discord bot one as soon as I get back. Yeah, so let's get into it. So there's different ways to do damage over time depending on how you want the mechanic to work, and I'm going to be teaching the way I think is the most sensible, but I will quickly mention the other two. So, well, there's going to be more than that anyway, but there's the few that I thought of when I was making it for my game. So I'll use paint. Paint's the best way to explain things. So first of all, the way I'm going to teach is having a list. And what happens is when I call the function to apply a burn, for example, it's going to add a certain amount of ticks to a list. Obviously, like, the burn will tick a certain amount of times, so it might go like tick, 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 4 ticks of some damage. So let's say I pass in 4 ticks. It's going to put 4 in the list, and there's going to be a coroutine running, and it's going to have a delay, like a wait for seconds, and that'll be the delay between each tick. So I could change that to be half a second, a quarter of a second, whatever I want. And after each of those ticks, it's going to check, is there something in this list? And if there is, it's going to deal damage, and then it's going to decrease them all by 1. So this is going to be a list of integers. And what that means is that if I have a 4 second tick, or sorry, a 4 tick burn, it's going to deal the damage 4 times and then it's going to stop. Then let's say as this is burning down, it goes down to 3, down to 2, and then I apply another one, that's 10, it adds that to the list. There's now a 2, that's not a Z, a 2 and a 10 in the list. And that won't do double damage because I don't want it to be so that if I apply 5 burns to the same target, I don't want it to stack the 10 burns. I want it to have the timer going. Now, the reason why I don't just remove the current burn and then add a new one in is because the one I had already might be longer and the one I have now might be longer. I don't know. You could argue you could do a check when you add to the current time remaining, whether it's bigger or smaller, whether you should replace it or not. I don't know, this is just a way of doing it. The benefit to having a list is that maybe you do want things to be bonus, like let's say if you have 3 burn stacks on the enemy, you want it to do bonus damage or something like that. You can easily check the length of the list. So there are benefits to using the system. Obviously, you could just say, apply burn and just run the coroutine again and have it like do double burn damage or triple, but I feel that's a bit broken, a bit OP. So we're going to do it this way. Obviously, I'll explain that when we get to it. So all you want in your scene, or you'll have it in your way. Obviously, this is compatible for 3D and 2D. So, you just... Well, I know this isn't making a game 2D technically, but if you have 2 characters and a projectile, and you want your projectile to deal damage over time, then sure, this is going to work. So we have 3 scripts. The health script, which is going to go on the enemy. Obviously, there's nothing in it yet. And obviously, that's going to control the player health. You'll have something like that, I'm sure. Status effect manager, or whatever you want to call it, that's just to handle the burning and ticking. You want that on the same object where the health script is so it can easily access it. It's the best place to put it. And then the projectile script. On the projectile, you'll already have a projectile script, presumably. And let's make this projectile a prefab so we can instantiate it. Technically, for this tutorial, I'm just going to have it start here and move towards the cube, so you won't need to do that. So what we'll do first is we'll quickly make the health script. It's going to be super easy. We just want to store a public int. Well, we'll go for float. Public float. We'll do it. Public int health. Public int max health. And we'll just have a function on the health in the void start. This isn't necessary. You'll have your own enemy health script already set up, so you have to do this part. This is for me to show you. And we'll just say on the start, health is equal to max health. Done. So if I go back into Unity and go to the enemy, or whatever it is you're hitting, if I just set the max health to 100 or something, so when we press play, that's going to be 100. Good. That's the health script completely done. We don't need anything else really for this. You could have obviously the UI showing the health. I'm going to just look in the inspector. So then we'll do the projectile next. So for the projectile, we want a public float speed for the projectile. I guess that'll be it, to be honest. We want a on trigger enter, so that when so make sure the collider, so on this sphere, if you didn't see already, I have a sphere collider that's got the trigger checked, so that when it goes inside something it will run the function on trigger enter. And I have a rigid body which has gravity disabled so that it doesn't fall, but it can still move and add force. And then we have our new projectile script, and I'll tweak that value. I'll just put 100 for now. That might be too much or too little, I'm not sure. So when we enter the enemy, what do we want to do? We want to say other, which is the thing we've collided with. Let me zoom in a bit. So on other dot get component, which is accessing the script on the enemy. We want to get access to their status. What do I call it? Enemy. No. Status effect manager. Sorry. There we go. Dot, and then we've not made the function yet, but I'll just call it apply burn. That'll be the name of the function, and I'll just pass in how many ticks. So I'll say 4. Okay. That'll be that. But before we actually get that script from the enemy, we need to make sure the thing we collide with has the script on, because if we just have this now and it collides with a wall or something that doesn't have the script on, it will actually just crash and pause and say, yeah, this doesn't exist. So we need to say if, we need a null check first to make sure it exists. So if other.getComponent status effect manager does not equal null. So if it is not nothing, then we'll get it. So that's just a safety check. Stop it from crashing. Obviously, we haven't made the function yet, so don't worry about that. And we'll also make a void start just to add some force in that direction. So I'll just say get component rigid body. We know that exists because it's just on the object. So we're going to get the rigid body of this, and we're going to add force in the forward direction. So vector3.forward. That's forward in the Z direction. So if you click on here and you see Z, that increases Z as I go in that direction, so that's the forward direction, and then that's the right, that's the up, and so on. And then obviously left is negative right, and then back is negative forward, and down is negative up. So I think you can actually do dot like back and stuff. Yeah, you can. Okay, but for the sake of this, it's forward. You would have it in the direction that the player is facing, or whatever you have your attack system like. So yeah, we're going to deal that, and we won't bother putting a force out. We do want to times this vector by the speed, so that we can increase the magnitude of the force. We've basically given it a direction, and then the float is the multiplier for the magnitude. So yeah, that's not going to compile because we haven't got this function in our status effect manager yet, so let's go do that. So in here, we want access to the health script on the enemy that we're on, because we need to damage the player, or damage the enemy. So we'll say private, because it doesn't need to be public, health, because that's the name of the script, it's the class. We want an instance of health, and we want it to be called health script or something. Then when we go down, we want to, in the void start, we want to get access to the health script. So we want to say this health script variable we've made is going to be equal to, and then we're going to grab the component health. And whenever you do get component just on its own, it means get it from this object. And as you see on the enemy, here's our status effect manager. We can basically, if we did get component, we're allowed at the moment to get health, box collider, mesh renderer, transformer, mesh filter maybe. I've not really looked into mesh render and filter for getting, because you never really mess with it much, but you probably will at some point when you're doing something more complicated. So yeah, we get access to the health, now we can damage it. So anyway, what do we want now? Well, we want a function, the burn one. So we'll have a public, because it's accessible from outside, void, because it doesn't return anything, apply burn. That's what we're going to do. And it's going to take in one parameter, int ticks, just how many times it ticks. And we'll hard code in, how long a burn tick is, but you could always have that as a parameter. We'll just, we'll do that. So what we want is, we want to start a coroutine, because that's the best way to manage this ticking. You could do it in the update, but it'd be more awkward, and it would also be less efficient. The thing about update is, when you start programming Unity, you might fall into the trap of putting loads of things in the update function. But as you know, if the update function in a 60 FPS game is ran 60 frames a second, you're having a lot of frames where code's getting ran for absolutely no reason. you only want code in the update that has to be there. For example, inputs or whatever else that you might need to check all the time, like raycasting maybe for something. But as a general rule, anything that doesn't have to be in there, you don't want in there. So, it just is it makes things more efficient if you don't have it in there, because you're not wasting resources running useless code. So we're going to use an enumerator for it. And before we start the enumerator, we need to do something with these ticks that we've taken in. So we want a list in here. So we'll have a, I'll put it as a public list so that we can see it. It doesn't need to be public, but if we make it private, we can actually view it in the inspector in debug mode, but we'll leave it public for now. A public list of type integer called burn tick timers. I don't know, burn tick timers, and it's a new list of type int, like so. And that list is gonna store the current time remaining on our burn ticks. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video in Paint when I was drawing it. Obviously, you'll see it in action when we do this. So that's going to store, the remaining time on each burn tick, and then as it ticks down, we'll keep doing damage until there's nothing left, and we'll stop. So when we apply burn, well, let's make the coroutine. So we'll say I enumerator burn, like so, and it's going to do its code, whatever it does. And then we need a while loop, because we're going to say while. We want to say while there's something in this list, we want to keep looping. We want to keep ticking down until there's nothing left in the list. Then we can stop executing. So this enumerator is only going to be running when there is something in the list, and as soon as there isn't, it'll stop. Unlike the update function, which will carry on every frame. So while burn tick timers dot count is greater than 0. So while there's something in there, while the length is greater than nothing, we want to loop, and we want to say burn tick timers. We want to do a for loop. So for int I equals 0. So we've got our indexer. So I is 0. While I is less than burn tick timers dot count I plus plus. We're going to increment through them all, and we're going to say for each thing in the list, we want to say burn tick timers I. So that's the one we're currently checking. Minus minus. Whoops. Minus minus. So we want to reduce all of the numbers in it by 1, and we want to then deal the damage. So we'll say health script. Health script dot health minus not minus minus. We'll say minus equals 5. We'll say that you would want this damage scaling with your characters, like power or something, whatever. But for now, 5. So it's going to do 5 damage a tick. And after we're going to decrease or decrement all our timers in the list, deal the damage, and then once we've dealt that damage, we want to remove from the list any values that are 0. Anything that has, reached 0 when it's decrementing, we'll now remove from the list. So we can say burn tick timers dot, here are all the list functions, there's remove all, and if you actually look, we need to pass in a predicate. I can't speak. Anyway, I usually pronounce things wrong. There's lots of American things on here, even though it's probably not an American word. I'm just using that as an excuse. But anyway, what that means is when you have some kind of functions in programming, this is like speaking to people who haven't done anything slightly advanced before. You'll see it in, if you follow my Discord bot series, for example, you'll have something happen, and then you get it's like a return value, is the best way of explaining it. And that value comes from what happens. So what we want to do is we want to give it a thing to remove. Now, it would be easy and lovely if I could just say remove, 0, remove all zeros. But as you see, it doesn't like it in that form. We basically want to say, think of it in maths. So let's say we're going to use I, because we're outside of the for loop, so we can use I. So we're going to say I equals arrow. So it's an arrow function. I is equal to 0. Now, that works now. I'll explain what that means. So it basically says, we're going to remove I where I is 0, if you get what I mean. So it's almost like the looping with I and then removing index I, but it's a bit different. So let's just say we've got our own I. I mean, you could probably think of a better word or like thing for this. I is just nicer to use. For the sake of explanation, let's say number, right? Let's just say this is number. So we say we're removing all, and we've got our number, and we're going to say we're going to do this in the case where this number we've got is equal to 0. So it's in this case. So you could always say like you could put anything here, basically, and that would be the determining factor on whether you remove it or not. Because obviously this is a boolean, okay? Number equals 0 is a boolean. It's going to return true if it's equals 0 and false if it isn't. And this is going to remove all when it's true. So it's looking for a boolean, even though it doesn't say so. It's basically what it's doing. It's saying, if this is true, we're going to remove the number, and if it's false, we're not. So whenever the number we're checking is 0, we're going to remove it. So that's the nice way of explaining it. I hope that makes sense to you. Should be simple enough, just if the number's 0, remove it, like that. I had an equivalent example in my bot code. If you go look at it on GitHub for the Discord bot, we have a await message function, which basically when someone does a particular command, it waits in that channel for the next message, and you have to pass in a filter for what messages it reads and what it doesn't, because you might only want it to read from a person. So you have the same kind of thing. You would say like I dot author is equal to person who sent the message, whatever. Like you would say we only do it in the case where it's that person, and this is we only remove it in the case where it's equal to 0. So I hope that makes sense to you all. And then after we've done that, we just want to say yield return new wait 4 seconds. Wait 4 seconds. We're going to pass in 0.75f. So that means we're going to wait 3/4 of a second. And then obviously that's the end of this part of the while. So then we actually do the while check again and basically say, is it still greater than 0? If it is, we'll do it again. And if it isn't, we'll end. And apply burn, all it needs to do is it basically needs to say, when we take it in, if burn tick timers dot count is greater than 0, do this, else do this. So if there is something in the list already, we don't want to start the coroutine again. We just want to, well, let's say it like this. So rather than if it's greater than 0, let's say if it's less than or equal to. Obviously, it's never going to be less than, but it's just a nice check. So if there is nothing in the list at all, we want to burn tick timers dot add. We want to add ticks to it. So whatever ticks we're taking in. Then we want to call burn. So start coroutine burn. So yeah, if we're not currently burning, add the ticks and start burning. If we already are burning, we don't want to start the coroutine again. We just want to pass in some more numbers. So burn tick timers dot add ticks. Like so. Now obviously I guess you could add the ticks to the list and then check the coroutine, but whatever, it's the same thing. Like yeah, you could just put the burn tick timers dot add ticks at the start and then no, you couldn't do that. Silly me. I have done it this way on purpose, because if you add it and then you do the check, it's not true anymore because there's something in the list. So yeah, never mind, this is right. Let's go have a check if this works. Let's see if it compiles and all goes nicely. So we've got 100 health and burn tick timers there. So I'm going to press play, and what should happen is the ball's going to move to the enemy, hit them, and the list will go up by 1. It'll have a number 3, 2, 1, gone. Now it always seems to do one more tick than it actually has. One sec. We also should probably say projectile. When it's done that, we're also going to destroy game object. So destroy the orb thing. And actually, no, that did the right amount. It did 4 ticks, and it did 20 damage. 4 times 5 is 20. I thought I'd put 3 ticks, but yeah. So obviously, if I now change this to say, now this burn's going to deal 6 ticks, obviously you expect it to then deal 6. Well, 6 ticks of 5, so 30 damage. So the health should go down to 70, and that should keep ticking. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. There we go, 70. And I guess the other thing you might want to check is you might want 2 burns at once. So what we'll do is we'll take the fireball and just duplicate it and put one back here. And just press play. That's the easiest way to duplicate this. So if we just look at the enemy now, whoops, you'll see he has 2 things going down, but the health's still only going down for every for 1. If there's 1 in the list, it doesn't stack the 2 burns, but it still keeps going with the new one. So clearly the first one hit, and then the other one hit with like a few more ticks on it. I mean, I'll do another duplicate, and we'll actually click on the enemy this time from the start. So as you see, adds 1 to list, add 1 to list, add 1 to list, 3, 2, and as you see, as soon as something hits 0, it gets removed from the list. Boom. And we've done 40 damage. There we go. So anyway, that's basically this done. You can do this with poison, corruption, whatever you've got. This is probably the best way to do it, to be honest. In my opinion, obviously you might want a different mechanic. You might want the stacking burns. Oops, let's go back to Unity. So simply a health script. Yours will be more complicated, but it works the same way. Projectile, just adds some force, and when it collides, it applies burn. Normally, your projectile will, deal damage to the enemy. You'll have that as well, of course. In my game, I've now added damage types so that enemies have vulnerability or resistance to fire, ice, arcane, whatever. So that's a nice, interesting mechanic to have. And the status effect burns obviously apply the damage type as fire, and then swords apply physical, and this, that, the other applies whatever. So yeah, that's the video. So obviously I'll quickly show you the code again. Obviously thanks for watching. If you want to sub, then mean a lot. Grow the channel, teach more people Unity, teach more people how to code discobots, whatever else, just keep it all going. Obviously thanks to everyone who's watching these videos, and especially to people who stick through to the end. I hope this helps you for your game. Obviously if it does, then a like would be highly appreciated, but apart from that, join our Discord server, take part in the community. I've got nothing else to say, so thanks for watching, and goodbye. There's one more thing, if anyone's still watching. For our server, if anyone here watching is a front-end web developer of reasonable skill, you'd have to be professional, but not just someone who looked up a HTML and CSS course or anything, because we need someone to help design our website. We've got the backend under development, and we have that under control, and the bot and API testing, and it all works, but we have a crappy looking front end for the website. So anyone that would like to volunteer to be part of that, obviously we would pay, but we don't currently have much money, as you might expect. But hey, you never know, in the future it could turn into something. But for now, it would be a voluntary job. Obviously you could write it off as experience. But yeah, so if you do want to take part of that, just message me or Mickey or anyone in the server as admin. Well, preferably just us two, actually. There is a hiring text channel in the server if you do want to do that. Actually, it's probably the best place to do it. So yeah, I think that's everything. But yeah, anyway, thanks for listening to all this. So yeah, thanks and bye.